So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone joining us today. Welcome to our webinar. We're thrilled to have you here as we dive into the Agentic Product Playbook. Just before we start, a quick housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so we will share that with you afterwards. If you have questions as we go, please drop them in the Q&A panel. We'll leave time at the end to answer these questions. You should be able to see the Q&A panel as we go. Quick introductions. I'm Mickey Alon, CEO and co-founder of Foldspace. I've spent my career focusing on building personalization platform like Gainsight PX and Marketo, for who knows those platforms, and then also co-authoring Mastering Product-Led Growth. I feel like I'm really excited to see the kind of the huge shift that we're seeing today. I think it's one of the biggest I've ever seen, which I call agent-led or agent-led growth. And joining me today is Kelly Flood, the AI product manager at Vidmob. Kelly has been in the trenches leading the transformation of their product into agentic experience. Welcome, Kelly.
Really excited to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. So what we will learn today, first, the shift from click-heavy workflow to agent-led. We'll define what an agent-led is, how to build outcome-driven experiences. We'll talk about the market disruption caused by ChatGPT and why. Then we'll walk through Vidmob's transformation, the process, and with real examples. So stay tuned. And we'll close with practical playbook you can use inside your own product as you transition towards an agent-led experience. So I'll start with the market shift and what's happening, just like double clicking into some of the stats and how it affects the way we think about product experience. I think there's very interesting points about that. So if you look at the two major disruptions of our time, back then Google disrupted portals like Yahoo, if you remember, replacing list of links that you had to go through with simple search prompt. And I think fast forward in 2022, ChatGPT disrupted search itself. It replaced the 10 blue links we got from Google with a synthesized answer. And then I think it definitely signals that users don't want to search, they want to find, they want to get the answer. And with staggering adoption, they reached 100 million users just in 2 months versus obviously Google has like billions or 1 billion users, but it took 12 years to get to this adoption. So I think that's outstanding adoption speed reflects the massive demand for answers over results. There's a user experience aspect beyond the fantastic AI potential and technology. The user experience and the way we treat technology it's changing rapidly and getting adopted. So people just don't want to search anymore. They want to get the answer. And that also kind of reflects what you should think about in your own product. The core of this shift is about intent, right? ChatGPT introduced that conversational UI, that simple prompt. Instead of giving you a list of places to go, it provides a destination instantly. It reads, synthesizes. The bottom line is a zero click to that value, right? And that it reflects now that expectation that actually users have. And if you think about this expectation, it bleeds into SaaS product. The AI native products knock down the old workflow heavy patterns, right? This is now creating a new bar for our products, and the known SaaS friction is now turning into strategic risk. This is the disruption that product teams must prepare for, because if you think about your SaaS B2B, these are productivity tools. These are tools that the users go every day to scale what they do in their job. And I think that, that friction, and then suddenly that they can see how more agentic or native AI product allows them to get this job done in a much more efficient way, is creating a strategic risk and something you should definitely address. So let's look at this holistic view and the classic SaaS tool. This is normally packed with hundreds of powerful features, but they are buried under nested menu, tabs, settings, making it just too complex to use. It's not like you don't need these features. You need them, right? Every feature has a purpose. Some of them you might deprecate, but most of them are needed to address different use cases, different personas, different stages. But the bottom line is while users know what they want to achieve, they know the outcome, whether it's they just signed up or it's a daily superpower user, they have a clear outcome that they know what they want to achieve. But the menu-driven UI just bury that value and that they came to use in your product. So I think that is one of the elements you want to tackle, and that two main element that leads to friction. And I call it one is the click tax. Users are forced to act as a human routers, clicking through multiple menus and filtering just to find and to get to their point of value. So the click tax is number one. Even if you're obviously even new users, you have no idea how to use it. If you're an existing user, you still need to go through this hustle. And then the other one is the cognitive load, right? Let's say I've got to the promised land. I'm there. I got to the report. I got to the settings. Now there's also like the cognitive load that the user must learn best practices as well as synthesize the data. So that's the second step that I call the cognitive load. In other words, the visualizations gives you the ingredients, but you have to cook the meal. And I think we can tackle both of them coming AI. So if you look at the true value path or how do I call the agentic path that is replacing the classical value path in SaaS. In this new agentic path, the agent handles the how behind the scenes, and it delivers the outcomes directly. So I think that the value path that you have today can inform how you approach the agentic experience of your product as well. And a quick example would be where traditional UX forces users to remember how to get things done. In the agentic UX, the user states the what, and the system figures out the how, and this is the core shift. So there's a lot of things related to the way we serve product, the user experience, that ties into why it is complicated, why we spend so much time in customer success and education to have users go and learn. But in the new era, I think we're going to spend the same effort just having the agent do, and the agent will learn for the user. So that's the big shift we're talking about. And I think it's a big disruption. Before we just jump into a Vidmob example, I mean, just kind of a closing thought here. If your SaaS depends on users becoming expert at clicking, you're one competitor away from being disrupted. So the future belongs to teams that are willing to disrupt their own UI. And I really mean it. I think it's like something to think about, and you can take action pretty quickly to do that before your competition does. So switching gear to Vidmob and how at Vidmob they applied this thinking. I'll hand over to Kelly to introduce Vidmob and talk to how they call it humanized project. So over to you, Kelly.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mickey. So just to kind of give you all an overview on Vidmob, we are the creative data company working in the creative intelligence space. So we work with some of the largest marketers in the world, and our mission is really to equip them with the data that they need to confidently make decisions on how to optimize their brand, creative, and media strategy. So the way we do this is we analyze all of the ads in our client's entire content ecosystem, and we pick out the specific every single individual creative element that appears in those ads, whether that be color, messaging, objects, or people, and we pair those creative elements with their actual KPI outcomes. So in a nutshell, what we're doing is we're marrying together art and science, something that's historically been, very segmented, and we're giving it to users in the form of this creative data to make them able to know how to optimize their brand, creative, and media strategy with that data. So by giving them access to this creative data, we are essentially giving them the fastest path to creative that works so that they can feel confident about the changes that they're making for any future campaigns that they're planning. So I'll dive into how Vidmob works in a little bit more detail as we start to explore some of the examples. But if we go to the next slide, how do we start to think about baking Foldspace into our work? If we go to the next slide again, it really goes back to what Mickey was kind of mentioning earlier, is that it starts with understanding who your users are, what their intent is, and what their desired outcomes are. And especially from understanding what's painful or challenging about getting from that intent to that outcome today. By understanding those frictions, that's really going to inform how you would want the agent to work within your platform. And that's how we started to figure out how we wanted Foldspace to work for us. So across all of our different user personas, we figured out that they share some of the same sorts of problems, even despite, different purposes using our platform. So the first one is that there's a lot of friction to actually getting to the insights that they care about. We're no exception to what Mickey was describing with having, a ton of complicated navigation that makes it hard for users to know where to go, let alone how to use all of our different reports and get value out of them. And it's especially overwhelming for brand new users to our platform. And this is where the agent can really start to help out, is it can understand the user's intent and bring them to exactly where they need to go to get the answers that they're looking for. Now, the next problem that we run into is that, before we go to the slide, Mickey.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Is even if users get to the data points that they're actually looking for, it's hard for them to understand the why behind it. They kind of get stuck on the so what of the data point, and they don't really know what to do with the data that we're giving them. And this is, again, where the agent starts to step in, is it can explain the data point in terms of language that makes sense to the users, so they know why the data point matters, what's actually valuable about it. And that takes us to our last point, is, knowing that we have a lot of data that's hard to navigate through and hard to understand, this ultimately slows down the insight to action loop that our clients actually want. So they might get to an interesting data point, but they don't actually know what to do with it. But again, this is where the agent can really step in and help the users understand not just why the data point matters, but what they can actually do about it. So throughout this entire process, the agent is really acting as a personal assistant, a personal brainstorming partner for the user to guide them to where they need to go and to help them get what it is they actually came to our platform for.
I love the partnership with the agent as a brainstorming partner. And I think we should remember that in B2B, as opposed to lightweight tools, is like you normally have multiple personas, right? It's like the classic B2B use case versus like the more B2C. It's just like you have different stages, multiple objectives, different industries even to address, which create, again, like that pressure on the UI today to deliver so many different perspectives on data analysis or actionability.
Exactly. So to kind of translate this into a metaphor, I sometimes think of our platform as being similar to a capital-intensive mining operation. We have a wealth of data, a ton of different reports that can be super valuable for our users, but it takes a lot of effort, know-how, and time to really use all these different reports and to actually get value out of them. And our users are busy people, and I'm sure that the users of your platform are also pretty busy, and they don't really have the time to sink into our platform every single day. So the consequences of this is that our client success team often has to step in and do a ton of hand-holding to essentially give users the answers that they need, when we would ideally want it to be more of a self-service experience. But as we start to build Foldspace into our UI, this really brings us from being more like a capital-intensive mining operation to being something more akin to panning for gold nuggets, or something even easier than that. Because the agent is doing all the work for you, bringing you to where you need to go, giving you the right insights that you're looking for, and telling you what to do with it. It's doing all the work for you so that you can get the gold nuggets that you actually need, and you can start to make jewelry with it or do whatever action makes the most sense based on that data point.
Awesome. So as before we jump into the agentic playbook, we'll do a quick poll just to understand and fine tune the next section. So you're gonna see questions in the screen. Please fill out the form right now. You should be seeing that. What is the primary business goal AI is supposed to serve your company? Maybe it's like obviously 2026. And really curious to see, is it about increasing product adoption, and you're planning to just launch this and not change any pricing or monetize on that? Is it about improving customer retention? You can use multiple answers, I believe, but really interesting to see. Yeah, I see votes coming in. Let's give it one more second. All right, this is more votes coming in. Right, it's a quick click. I'll give it 5 seconds. Interesting. So there's definitely like surprisingly look at optimizing internal operation, reduce cost as well, which is really, really interesting as a first one, and then enhancing competitive differentiation are the top two, which is really, really interesting input. I'm going to share the result with you just to see. Really interesting. Awesome. So we'll jump to the next the agentic. Let's just walk through the actual playbook, the framework we use that with Vidmob as well, and how it's used across customers as well. So I like this quote that the real interface is the interaction itself, and just users state what they want, and the product does the rest. To me, it's like the future of interaction as well. And we're going to talk even about like even the agent performing tasks on behalf of the user. So we'll start with the framework. With step number one, we have 7 steps. And I'm going to talk about the user intent. Everything starts with understanding intent, as Kelly mentioned, and the mapping, which is a step you should be doing. What is the user really trying to achieve, the outcomes, and this becomes the foundation for every agent behavior that you're gonna write the requirements for. So what really the first step means, you want to define these outcomes, map them to the intents. I think that the table that Kelly did was fantastic. Then link those intents to actions and add the guardrails and refine. This gives the agent kind of the backbone of what it needs to perform as a set of key actions towards that. So that mapping, which should be done in any case, in any feature you're building, right now it's something that you draft as part of the instructions and for each actions, and mapping these into the AI is going to be key because it's going to be part of what the agent understands it's supposed to fulfill. And then one of the things we want to do as well is making sure that once you have all these intents, you start building those evaluation to test out these intents. So looking at back to the slide we shared before, this kind of illustrates the friction. And this is what the agent is designed to do. So when you think about that mapping, map that journey. And you want to say, hey, where's the click tax? And where's the cognitive load? How do I now tackle that? And that's become my play towards these journeys, the different persona I have and different objectives and outcomes are now becoming part of my roadmap tools. And I think that's a fantastic way to get time to value very quickly with user intent to outcome. Moving next is the Vidmob persona and objectives. You want to talk about this, Kelly?
Yeah, sure. So to kind of translate what Vidmob's specific user personas are and what their intents are, ultimately it boils down to these 3 different archetypes. So first is the brand manager, who's responsible for ensuring that all the ads across their entire content ecosystem is compliant with their brand guidelines. So what they need to do is ensure that all their teams are compliant with those guidelines and to know where they need to intervene. What's really difficult about that today is that it requires a ton of manual QA to even figure out who is complying versus not. It takes a lot of effort to make sense of that data and to know what to do with it. Moving over to the media planner, they are responsible for building and monitoring campaigns. And essentially what they're doing is they're optimizing budgets and their targeting strategy based on daily performance signals. So what they need to do is they need to figure out which of their ads to pause, fix, or scale. And they need to understand why their performance might be fluctuating on a day-to-day basis. But what's difficult for them is that they rely a lot on very manual, decentralized reporting that doesn't make it really clear what action they should be taking based on all those different data points. And similarly for the insights persona, they are responsible for interpreting creative results to really understand what's working and why it's working so that they can guide future creative concepts. So they need to be able to have clear storylines around the data points without relying overly on a ton of manual A/B testing. But they have a ton of different data signals to parse through, and it's really difficult to tell stories with that. So understanding all these different user personas and what their intents and their desired outcomes are, that's really going to inform how we wanted the agent to work within our platform. So if we go to the next slide, you as product folks, you already understand very well who your users are, what they're trying to do with your platform and what they're trying to get out of it. So it's really just a matter of spelling that out for the agent so that the agent has the knowledge that it needs to bring users where they need to go based on their own prompt. So to give a specific example, let's say we have a media planner who's using our platform for the first time. They don't know anything about our reports, where to go or how to use it, but they ask a simple question in their own terms, something like, how are my ads performing this week? The agent will know to bring the user to the right destination, to digest the data for them, and to start answering specific questions about what action they can take from that data. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you a specific example within our UI. So the user asked, how are their ads performing this week? The agent brings them to the right report, starts loading the data for them, and the user can then start to ask specific questions about the data. So in this case, the user asks something like, based on my performance, which of my ads should I be putting more budget behind? And the agent thinks about it and answers with a specific table telling them all the different ads that they should put more budget behind. And then it explains and rationalizes its recommendation for the user. So just by understanding who the user is and what their intent was, the agent was smart enough to bring them exactly to their desired outcome and to explain it in a way that builds trust with the user rather than the user having to put blind faith in, an AI generated answer.
And I believe it's it's a use case with a lot of analytics systems. They have so many different reports and slicing and dicing of data. And I think, as product experts, what's the best report or set of reports that will drive that. And that's exactly what the agent needs to know, because the user will still have the same question, but as opposed to using the wrong reports, it really makes your system look very simple because suddenly it just routes the, one of 100 different reports you can generate, but it generates the right one. So the feeling for the end user is it's being navigated to the outcome very quickly without being overwhelmed with a lot of like the click tags.
Exactly.
So looking at the knowledge part, it's really critical part, an element for any agentic experience. The agent must understand the product and the best practices, not just the how-to, like the features. And usually in knowledge bases, you have like how do you create, save, change the filter. It's also about the outcomes and best practices that you normally have in the company. So that is a gold mine for the agent to be the superpower user that acts on behalf of the user and to create just effective orchestration and optimal outcomes. So it is grounding the agent in that knowledge is critical. Obviously, it reduces hallucination. And then what you want to do is creating that context. So where any interactions happening with the agent, there's context on top of that. It's not just point and click. It actually has some context about what is this feature. In Vidmob, for example, what is this element impact report? What does it do? How the best way to analyze that as well. So it's just having that element that is part of every interaction through the chat, for example, is really important. It adds a lot of context and you feel like the agent is very useful as opposed to the agent asking you for context. It actually has that knowledge and right away can help you ingest the data, understand the data, and so forth. So knowledge, again, is really one of the key elements we want to do there. Quick knowledge example on Vidmob.
Yeah, I would say this was actually the easiest part of getting the agent set up is essentially we wanted to kind of give it a brain transplant, so to speak, to have the expertise that it needed to really be a good thought partner for the user. So all we had to do was upload all of our help center documentation, our internal resources to give it the knowledge and the know-how that it needed to really be a good partner for our user. But not only that, we also wanted to make sure that it was trained on a little bit more information in the industry to understand how media and creative factors might impact performance, and also gave it specific strategic frameworks to think within. And by giving the agent that knowledge, it was smart enough to make strategic recommendations and to really be a good brainstorming partner for our users to work with. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you a specific example of how that might work. So in this case, a user might ask a question to understand why their performance has been dropping over the past month, and it will ask the agent that, and the agent will recommend different strategic paths that the user could follow. So it recommends you could go to a media report to understand what media levers might be contributing to that shift. You could go to more of a creative report to figure out what creative factors are influencing that. Or you could diagnose it on an individual ad by ad basis to see how each of those are fluctuating and how that's contributing to your overall number shift. But based on all those different strategic paths, the agent recommends that you start with the media report so that you can rule out any sort of budget or targeting changes that might be swaying your numbers. So the agent is smart enough to really, give you answers in a way that makes sense to you, gives you different options and specific recommendations on why you could start there, but it's still giving you a specific recommended starting point for you to go off of. So really it's giving the user all the information and the context that it needs to decide what to do next and what action they want to take.
This is awesome. I think it's like very key that every interaction has this, because then it kind of switches the agent from just like question answers, or it just like goes out there and figure out the data, is to be very, very specific, because usually in B2B, this is what makes a huge difference from like valuable agent that I can kind of see as a trusted advisor versus like, yeah, it looks at the screen and just tells me what the top one, which I can see by myself. There's a huge difference. And at Vidmob, I think there was like a lot of framework around how do you really analyze data in an effective way. Shifting to the context awareness, one of the things we saw is like it's really important to enrich the agent with the user context. It's about personalization. It's about what role the user play, what function it has, right? So that context of like in real time, this is the user speaking to me is gonna be a great idea for the agent, because it really can. It can optimize the orchestration it does based on who you are. Maybe you're a super user, admin, new sign up, completely different context for the agent, and can fine tune the way it interacts with you. Because as a super user, I want productivity, and as a sign up, I want to see that you're kind of explaining me the basics, right? As opposed to advanced user that you don't need to go through the basics. This is really helpful. I don't know if you're using a lot of like, I'm using United, I always call them like I still always have to kind of provide the context of my call. Here, I think in the agent, if you do that, the context is already as part of the agent, and it feels much more productive and great. And again, reduce hallucination as well. And then it just removes the repetitive clarifying questions, like when you suddenly see agents trying to get the context. So I think that's one of the things that we saw, that we have, like we call it situational precision. If it knows exactly where you are and what you did, the things that it can perform are much better, much more accurate. And it can be even proactive and suggest next steps. So context is really key. And give us an example from Vidmob.
Yeah, this is the capability that I was most excited about personally with using Foldspace, because historically, Vidmob, we haven't really ever been able to offer any sort of customized experience for our users. Regardless of who you were going to get the same sort of guidance, and you could use any sort of feature that you wanted to. We never really had any sort of user awareness in our platform, but this was a really big unlock with shifting to Foldspace. As we started to collect more data on our users, we started to get a clearer picture of who they were, what role they have, what industry they work in, what company they work for. And we started to pass that context on to the Foldspace agent to equip it with the ability to offer more customized experiences based on who the individual is. So in this example, we have a creative strategist, and as soon as the strategist starts to interact with the agent can check on all the different context attributes of that user and start to have more tailored responses for that user. So this creative strategist, they ask about their Instagram performance. the agent immediately knows that they're a strategist, meaning that they're going to care more about creative data as opposed to media data. It checks the brand that the user works for. It knows that this user is working in the CPG industry and that it's asking about Instagram. So having all these different attributes, the agent basically has the full picture that it needs to really tailor exactly what it's going to say for the user, to bring them to the right report, to analyze the data for them, and to give them specific insights and recommendations that are really tailored based on all these different attributes. So if we go to the next slide, we can see, what kinds of responses it had. So the agent, knowing that this is a creative strategist, brings them to more of a creative focused report and has all the context that it needs to put it in the lens of Instagram and in the lens of CPG, the industry that the user is in. And it gives the user a specific insight based on those attributes to tell them, oh, you're using the wrong story type. You're leaning a lot into educational story types, but that's driving down your performance a lot. And when users are watching CPG creative, they typically expect more fun, entertaining, surprising content. So we recommend you lean more into entertaining story types for your future campaigns. So having all that knowledge about who the user is, what situation they're in, and what they actually care about, the agent is able to give very refined responses for that user, as opposed to something very generic that's likely to be hit or miss depending on who the agent's talking to.
I believe we are in the situation where it's optimization, and like the more personalized the experience is, the better. Today, people are choosing, Gemini, ChatGPT because they feel this or Claude because they also know them better as well. And the personalization margin is not something that I would disregard. So I think you can definitely address. And again, B2B, you have the data savvy, you have the practitioner, you have the different roles, and they care about different things and they want to see different responses. Maybe they're more technical, they'll see code, but if they're high level, they should see a dashboard. So I think that can be fine-tuned, the personalization, which is the next section. When you think about number 4, is personalization ties everything together. And there's another elements of memory, preferences, history, continuity. This is where your product starts to feel human as part of humanizing your product. So there's a lot of ideas how you can make it more and more personalized. Think about, you can create a workspace, and with memory, it should be able to summarize, to search. So the agent can be really adaptive and evolving with each interaction, as opposed to be kind of very generic. So I think, looking at session memory, adaptive behavior, evolving guidance, that's something that is going to be really interesting to see the difference. And I feel like when most systems will be more and more agentified, the personalization is going to be important and big difference, and drive that value. So one of the elements I also look at from personalization is like the way you create the interaction as well. So again, like if I can go in and I can manage my own memory, I can go back and see the historical one, I can search, I get a summary of what I do. It's really helpful, again, because usually it's a working tool, it's operational tool in B2B, and this can make me much more productive. I don't need to jump out and save things in other places. I can go back and just be very, very, very effective. So personalization is something to definitely think about. We're going to jump into the user interaction. And then coming AI and chat, I don't think that, everything is going to be chat. I think UX has a new role, and the way they think about those interaction and what type of interaction. So I think that agentic products blend multiple models. You can offer different things based on best practices. You can obviously do chat, but I don't necessarily want to chat with a lot of reading when I go to something very productive. Voice can be very, very powerful in cases where, for example, in the CRM, I want to update data, I want to update my meeting. Voice is a fantastic way to just do it, even through mobile on the go. And there's other elements like, for example, we call it chatter blocks, the widgets inside the chat, which are very, very effective once you want to potentially update information. So the user sees them as a preview. So as a UX function, deciding which one fits each scenario, and just don't think everything is going to be just chat, because visualization is very powerful if you do it correctly. When we analyze data, graphs, visualization is fantastic. And you want to make sure that you blend and decide when do you trigger each one. Here's a couple of examples of UX experiences. There's the promptless example that I can just plug in automated AI generation. There's no prompt. I go to the screen. It generates the TLDR, for example. Or as we've seen before, a chatter block, before I want to save on the bottom left, before I want to save an insight and publish it, I want to review it. I want the user to say, I've reviewed it and just save. So there's no hallucination or misunderstanding between the agent and the user. So especially in other places when you want to launch a campaign, those update, create elements are great with Chatterblock as well. And
Yeah,
some
just
other,
to jump
yeah,
in here, like it
sure.
was really important for us we wanted something that went beyond just a chat layered on top of our UI, but we wanted something that was really actually weaved in and integrated within our platform. So that's why we wanted to go down the Chatterblock route to not just have it generate an insight for me, but make it publishable within my library or editable. And we also used Foldspace to generate some TLDR summaries for each of our key reports. So we tried to make it as more seamlessly integrated within our UI as opposed to just the chat layer. So that was something that we really liked, was the flexibility, the customizability for different types of use cases across our platform.
Absolutely. And usually as now UX and PMs, there's other elements. For example, this is the recent one that, there's steps that you feel like, hey, if there was an AI here, it would be very, very useful. In this case, for example, uploading and mapping CSV files, right? We can definitely leverage AI, and this is a promptless option. So I can map the AI with AI, for example, from my CSV to the records. These type of tasks are super important. They're just like labor intensive, and AI can just do it promptly and accurately. And those are promptless examples. So when you map if you remember initially the flow, the click tags and the cognitive load, that's where you can just like trickle in those, we call it task agent. That's what they're focusing on, and you get quick time to value and just like remove friction instantly with a very basic elements. The other one I really like is summon the feature, or basically getting the information to you instead of like having you go and scatter. CRM classic. I want to prepare for a meeting. I want to understand an account. I want to see something visually because I want to see red and green and I want to see the numbers. This is where Chatterblock is fantastic. I can see it just aggregates the view for me. It brings it to where I am. I don't want to navigate anywhere. And does the summary for me. So different use cases. And when you look at the journey, decide what you want to do. Do you want to summon the feature? Do you want to navigate? Do you want to actually trickle that agent, the prompt list agent in? So it just helps you just like reduce friction everywhere. And as the goal would be again to make it agentified from intent to outcome. So we have two more things. One is the iterative approach. One of the huge unlocks that you have with agentifying your product and introducing conversational UI. Number one, you don't need to redesign your product. You can leverage existing editors and backend endpoints. This is a very, very powerful element, but it also allows you to really ship faster as well. Because that conversational interface is something that is allowing you to just like start with just simple chat, give that value, learn, iterate, close the loop, as opposed to waiting for a big, massive AI feature. I think even as you think about any releases that you're going to have, which one would you agentify? Which one you're going to reduce friction? So experimentation is becoming really possible, where I think in SaaS B2B experimentation of feature was pretty challenging to do because you have complex UI. So seamless launch, shipping faster, and just increasing velocity. You want to get feedback very quickly from users. Otherwise, you're going to build a lot of things that they might not find useful, or they're just going to take a different route. So agility is going to be important, starting from agentic flows, and then absorbing complexity. That's something that I think is going to be worthwhile to be part of your strategy. So,
Yeah, this was a pretty big lesson for us to learn because we actually tried to build our own in-house agent before. It took months and months of data science and engineering effort to build it and to maintain it. It's lived behind a feature flag forever while we tried to perfect it. It only lived on its own page as opposed to following the user wherever they are. And ultimately, the outcomes weren't great from the user perspective. But by experimenting with Foldspace, we found that it was much more lightweight. It was essentially me and an engineer sitting side by side in a room while she coded and I refined the instructions to ship it. Very quick to stand up, launch to users and get their feedback. And it's something that follows the user wherever they are. And ultimately, they were a lot happier with the results of the Foldspace agent's responses as opposed to what we had tried to build in-house. So yeah, it's definitely been a really big unlock for us compared to trying to build something super customized and in-house on our own.
Awesome. And we're going to finish up with observability. I think it's critical, especially based on the survey I saw, like optimizing cost as well. It's something that is important to think about. But you want to see every action, every conversations, create also a quick feedback loop. Imagine how difficult was it to get feedback from your customers. You send them an NPS survey, they are negative, positive, then you need to set an interview. You're trying to understand what is the issue, what is the gap, what do they really need, what is the friction point, even just tapping into like market signals. What do I actually need the agent to do? So conversation is a gold mine as well, on top of being understanding what is actually the most common actions the agent does. So you want to measure everything that is happening. You want to measure the actions that the agent took. You want to see the closed loop feedback. And you want to have control for cost, quality, and latency. As you go forward, we're seeing as specialized models, hybrid models, and you want to choose the best one for your customers. So the best speed, the hopefully lower cost, and the best quality. And there's quantitative and qualitative elements for quality. You want to see that when does it have a knowledge gap? When does it have an action gap? But maybe users are asking for more agentic experiences that the agent is not allowed currently to do. So that observability and closed loop is something that is becoming part of the AI PM daily job, looking at see what's going on, see how the agent behaves and fine tune it, and just tabbing into these conversations. So we're going to see a really interesting example from Vidmob.
Yeah, just by having the visibility into every single conversation our users are having with the agent, we kind of know how they feel about it and when it's falling short of their expectations. So we can see whenever they are thumbs up or thumbs down in the conversation, so we know where to pay attention. And if we need to, we can even watch their session replay to see exactly what went wrong. So these are just, some screenshots of some feedback that we got from our users where the agent was including data points that should actually have been treated like outliers, or it wasn't giving the expected result, or it was explaining things in a way that was contradictory. All of these, it just took me 5 minutes to find what was wrong, to revise the instructions, and then only a minute or two for those instructions to be pushed live to our platform. So it's much faster than what Mickey described with having to talk to the user, to write tickets, to have to wait for engineering to ship something. And it's also a pretty good discovery tool because if I see users trying to get the agent to do something that it's not already equipped to do, then that's basically a really quick feedback feature request for us to look into so we know what gaps are, the most in demand for our users.
Absolutely. I remember like the days when you see the gap. Why? Because you launched something, it was working for you in the demo, right? But then customers with real data, real use cases, saw some friction. Eventually it led to support tickets. Support tickets went to engineering, back to product. It was actually UX gap and things like that. Massive loops. And then you have a requirement document and a release in 3 months. This is very difficult to do with agent. I think with agent, you can do the opposite. You can see exactly what was the behavior, what is the gap, and close it instantly. With all the safety in place, with versioning and evals in place for sure, but I think you can close the loop very quickly and truly deliver that experience the users want, and tapping into what they really will be helpful for them. They just ask for actions. What we did see is like there's no education needed. Users, as soon as they see a prompt, they would try to see what it can do, not just as a question answer, just because of the massive education happening by OpenAI, Gemini, everybody in the market. So we're going to wrap up with the key takeaway and open up for any questions you might have. So key takeaways. One of the things I would emphasize is the UX paradigm has shifted. The user experience is now intent-based. You want to map and use that flow that we kind of shared to reduce the click tax and the other loads, basically the cognitive load that you might have. And you want to also think about every feature you're going to launch. Can you start with agentic experience? Can we start as a chat, maybe as a chat block? Like you can actually ship more features and actually do it faster, but it should be part of every release. What is the agentic version of that feature in parallel? Because again, more and more will as soon as the agent will be more and more common, it might be the first thing that the user does. Velocity increases, and when teams ship basically intent, not screens, right? So if you actually think about agentic experience first, you launch it, you learn from this, and then you build a full screen if it's potentially an editor or a report of some sort. So I think it's a very good way to run experiments and again, increase velocity. And again, the agent becomes a live feedback loop. So I think that some just people are just launching AI agents and then they also kind of make it a one-shot click where I think, you might did a great job on analyzing the data, might not. So the conversational interface allows the user to give feedback on that AI experiences. And I think just launching it and getting into the rhythm of like, this is fine. People, it might not deliver all the features in day one, but the best way is to start, get that feedback, that into motion and change also the way you organize releases or the way you think about requirements. Again, a great requirement for agentic feature would be like map the existing journey, map the desired journey with the agentified experience, and then decide which UX patterns you want to leverage, either text, voice, summon the features to the user, or the other way. Once you have that, moving that to building by engineering should be straightforward because you've mapped the end-to-end experience. Any closing thought, Kelly?
No, I think you said it all pretty well. I mean, I think for us, this was definitely the right call compared to trying to do it ourselves, just in terms of how much faster it's been to shift, how it's been a great way to discover. And I'm really excited to start rolling this out more widely to all of our clients. The ones that have been using it already are really excited about it. So definitely something that I think is worth exploring for any other product managers who are thinking of building an AI agent into their own platform.
Awesome. All right. So wrapping up, we'll open to questions. See if we have any questions. Feel free to send them over. And so one of the common question would be like, there's build versus buy, which parts and so forth. I believe that there's different areas, and as being chief product and technology officer in several companies, there's three types of pressure that you need to satisfy when you deliver product. You have the core roadmap that you're in. Vidmob is the creative data company. There's so much to build in this scenario. Your key roadmap to stay competitive. There's another roadmap to introduce AI on the back end, specializing in your inner processes, right? This is like deriving insights or building automatic workflows that the agent can do that is dealing with your first party data, your customer data, your own intelligence. And then the third one, which is the user experience, that basically, all right, I have these agents, but how is my UI or interaction? So that's suddenly a third element that this is where it's just the expectation is to have a flawless UI and the agent will behave and stream the responses where it's not necessarily your IP, but it's just a very important serving of your agent, like how does the agent interact with the end user. So I think there's three elements and you will probably want to choose which one you focus on. There's another question. When recommendations are published to the library, how are those later used? That's for Kelly.
Yeah, so our users are looking at their historical data to understand what has worked well historically so that they know what changes they can make for future campaigns. So they basically save any insights and recommendations to their library so that they can refer back to later. Typically what they're doing is they're using these to put together creative briefs that they pass on to their agencies or whatever production teams that they're working with to say, hey, this is what's been working well. This is what we should be doing for our next campaign.
Awesome. And then we have another question. The click tax burdens the user, but also increases the code stack. Could taking the agentic approach ultimately reduce both the user click tax as well as the code stack, given the agent is handling the task? I do think that's definitely the case, although eventually we still need to have a way to find the UI. But when we think about launching new features, you just start with agentic, though you reduce a lot of development time. You don't like shove another thing in a menu now, and you're trying to make it like as simple as possible. So I think that's the benefit. Like you reduce both the code level and the click tax that the user has to or the customer has to go through. And then I think in some cases you just leave it at there. In some other cases, you still want to have this kind of tandem mode or kind of canvas mode that I want to see a dashboard. The visualization is great. I just don't want to create the dashboard because I don't know the best practices. I don't want to start analyzing it, but the visualization is helpful. And in many cases in SaaS B2B, you've built really great screens. It's just getting there or optimizing the filters or doing the analysis is what's bad. So think about it like you have the canvas, dedicated canvas for each use case. You just want to eliminate less the menu burden. And again, the code definitely, and all the QA and so forth. And then another one, the new UI becomes more intent focused based on learnings. Clicks move to background agent work. Yeah, that's the idea. Some of that, again, is the front-end agent. Some of it is the back-end agent work. Depends if it's a first-party data and internal processes versus the user interaction. There's another question. Can agent analyze interlinked tables, chart, geosaptial maps, trigger running? The answer is yes. It depends how you implement that. There's like generic way to analyze maps or charts by visualization of the browser. But in some other cases, as we saw, like we can actually build a task agent that's what it does. And then it actually works almost as a promptless. It actually exactly knows the structure of the data. You optimize that because you want to make sure that you're sending clean data to the AI agent as opposed to sending all the visualization as well, which can lead to just more tokens, but both should work. The key was, from our learning, is to add the context. Who is the user? What is their goal? What is the best practices? And then what the report they are looking at. If you just analyze report, it's a very generic answer. I know that ChatGPT can be very convincing about insights, but if it's a professional tool, it's going to surface, the generic agent will surface things that the user already knows. And it's not very helpful. When you add the context, then it becomes much more powerful.
This was actually something that we kind of learned ourselves when we first started working with the agent. Is initially we would pass every data point within the backend to the agent for it to generate an insight based off of, but that made it take a long time for the agent to process all that data and come up with an insight on it. So we had to get more efficient with only passing just enough data for the agent that the agent actually needs to come up with an answer to avoid having a super long load time. So we were able to get it down to just a couple of seconds, so which is more in the realm of what users are used to, as opposed to having to sit there for 30 seconds and then you lose patience and click away.
Exactly. There are different strategies. Again, the best one for true analysis is those dedicated task agents that then you can clean up the data, send them, the kind of JSON format or whatnot. And then it also allows for very effective caching. Because again, as we go to next year, very effective agentic experiences gets the user prompting all day and generative 10x from your system. If you do it successfully, if you just do it like bolting on AI, it's not going to cost you anything. Nobody's going to use it. But if they're going to use it, suddenly you're going to see that you're going to get like, dozens of interaction per user per day, and you have a lot of users, you want to think about performance, you want to think about cost, you want to think about latency. And when you build those specialized task agents, that's the benefit of doing that. They're purpose built for a specific task. You can always go with the generic one, but as you release those, they are becoming very, very effective. We saw that in the CSV upload, the agent just does the mapping, or that report, the task agent was just getting the right amount of data in the right format before the conversational agent was giving the answer. Those are very effective ways to launch in a faster speed, accuracy, and so forth. All right, with that, we're going to finish. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will be sharing the recording and looking forward to seeing you next time.